Bienvenidos
Yay!
to the Latinx Kidlit Festival. We are the co-founders of the festival. I'm Mayra Cuevas, the author of Does My Body Offend You? And I'm joined by...
I'm Villasante. I'm the author of The Grief Keeper, and I'm here with...
Ismée Williams. I am the author of This Train is Being Held. Thank you everyone for joining us today for day 2 of this amazing festival. We want to keep this brief, which is
hard for us.
Here are a few quick reminders. Please sign up to win free books for your schools. We have so many donations from our wonderful publishers. The link is in the chat. Second, you have an opportunity to win a free author visit for your school. The link will also be dropped in the chat. That is thanks to Penguin Random House for sponsoring those author visits. And I want to send a huge thank you out to our sponsors and community partners. All the love. Thank you so much.
Yes, and also thank you to our wonderful volunteers. We literally could not do it without you. And lastly, y'all, we are official. The Latinx Kidlit Book Festival is now a 501c3 nonprofit. If you are able, please consider making a donation. Help us continue to bring this free content to schools and libraries across the country and to keep doing what we're doing. And now the excitement is real. On to our special guest, Mayra.
Woohoo! Bienvenida, the amazing Maria Hinojosa, who is backstage and will be joining us. Hi, Maria. Buenos dias, Maria.
My God, I need to start all of my mornings like this. Like,
I know you have your own pep squad here, like waiting for you. Con la musiquita. Maria, we're so honored that you're here with us. I'm a journalist. I wanted to be a journalist since I was like 12. I grew up watching you on CNN, and it was, I cannot describe what it meant to see you and see myself in you.
I hear that a lot. Actually, that's kind of the reason. There are many reasons why I ended up doing what I do, right? But I always thought, like, well, there's going to be a young Latina someplace who's going to hear or see me, and that's going to blow their minds. And I want them to see a Latina who is proud Mexican, but also doesn't look like the other and doesn't sound like the other television or radio anchors. I knew that I wanted, because I always felt different, right? And thankfully I was, very privileged. I had incredible mom and dad, and they taught me to love Mexico and everything about mi cultura. And so, I know that I had the possibility of just kind of being very, very out and loud in terms of, because I also couldn't fit in. Like this.
I'm getting so emotional because that was me. I was that girl. I was that little girl sitting in Puerto Rico watching you and thinking that can be me one day. Like I can, and I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I wanted to be behind the scenes. But I'm crying thinking that.
Why are you going to make me cry so early? I just did my makeup. I'm going to be on TV tonight, and I'm trying to be like, okay, like try to get it together, because they're not doing my makeup at the TV station anymore because of COVID. And it's just like, and everybody's booked. This is the great news. My makeup person who lives here in Harlem, I said, honey, can you help me? And she goes, oh my God, I'm doing Saturday Night Live. I'm like, okay,
that's awesome.
I compete with that. But yeah, so thank you for seeing yourself in me, mamita. That makes me so, it fills me, because that is the idea. That was exactly the idea. So thank you. Well,
thank you for everything. I want to make sure we kind of dove in. I want to make sure I give you the proper introduction. For those of you who are not familiar with Maria's journey, Maria Hinojosa, it's a Pulitzer and Emmy award-winning journalist, a best-selling author, and the first Latina to found a national independent nonprofit newsroom in the United States. But even before all that, she was a girl with big hair and even bigger dreams, Born in Mexico and raised in the vibrant neighborhood of Hyde Park, Chicago, Maria was always looking for ways to better understand the world around her and where she fit into it. I love that, because that is the story, I feel, of like every Latino person in the world. And Maria, you have been in broadcasting for almost 30 years. And in that time, you have managed to remain your most authentic self, which is something that I have always admired. What has your Latinx identity meant to you?
Wow, that's a weighted question in many ways. I think professionally, because I was thinking that it was going to be a question about my profession. I think professionally, it gave me the clarity of why I was doing what I was doing. And the thing is that it was a very different time. I mean, it's not ancient history, it's modern history, but in the 1980s, Latinos and Latinas still were not considered a threat the way we are now, or a menace, all based on lies. We were, just not very visible. And so when I realized that I was the first one to get into like the newsroom of NPR, it was all about my understanding my privilege. I had a very keen sense of, because we didn't grow up wealthy, we grew up in a community that had a lot of wealth. I saw it and I was like, well, we don't have that. So it wasn't about wealth in terms of understanding my privilege, but it was like, well, I went to a private prep school and I went to the Ivy League. I was at Barnard here at Columbia University. O sea, I have this privilege, and I have to do something. Mm-hmm. And I think I kind of learned that from mi mamá, en el sentido de que, all of this was also tied to our experience of Mexico, going back to Mexico all the time, crossing that border. So having very much a presence of mi mexicanidad. And then in the newsroom, it was like, I have to be the best journalist that I can be. These people don't know anything about what's happening in my community. Yeah. No saben nada. No saben nada. Entonces, to be the best journalist that I could be, I was like, I have to stand up and represent. And also, again, there was this key issue, which is, y no puedo como try to pass. Like, no. So that thing that you see as different, unique, whatever, being the first Latina in that newsroom, that thing is going to be the thing that defines who I am, and you will see me and understand me. And I am a messenger in many cases. And then, of course, it was being a messenger on a national scale, but never thought about it leading to a role of leadership, which is one that now in this moment, I absolutely embrace.
There's a lot of students that may be watching this, and you were the first Latina in every newsroom you ever worked with. How did you handle that emotionally? How did you handle that? Did you feel a pressure to fit in? Were there times where, I know this has happened to me, that well-meaning people say just weird stuff
all the time.
Like, oh, how exotic you are. Like, that's a good one. That's one that just comes out at random times.
I know. They said to me, oh my God, you look so tribal. I'm like, what?
Okay. But, we find ourselves in these spaces as adults, in professional spaces, kids and social and school circumstances where they don't have power. And we just feel this pressure around us, sometimes to speak up, and sometimes we just don't have the energy, right?
It's very funny because when I was first asked that question, when the book dropped, the adult version of the book dropped, and people were like, what was it like to be the first Latina in that newsroom at NPR? And I was like, I was happy to have a job. You don't understand. There was a recession. So I was like, y'all are strange that you don't have any Latinos and Latinas, but okay, here I go. But I was like, I have a job. I don't have to wait tables any longer. I can call my dad and be like, Papi, it was worth it. The college, the whole thing, my vision for what I want to do. And then again, it was also the norm. You imagine I was the first in every place. So it's like, this is normal. And I mean, yeah, there were really weird moments, very strange things. And I'm a boxer now, right? But I realized that back then I actually knew how to, just kind of weave, just
You have to, right? You have to learn how to do that if you're going to survive.
like and it was a lot of ignorance, right? Now we use terms that are very powerful. We don't want them to lose their weight. Terms like racism and white supremacy and homophobia and Islamophobia, and we talk about things, but we're able to have a concept. Back then, it was there really wasn't a way to understand it, and there was no way that you would really bring forth the kind of like this is weird, or why did you say that? Why did you call me Chiquita Banana? Like, why did you that's
Yeah, there wasn't a language. I feel like there wasn't a shared language, and like even if you would have said something, the other person would have no idea what the hell you were talking about, right? They were just being funny or or conversational or just trying to connect.
One of my favorite stories that I tell quickly is some very bad things were happening in the South Bronx. And I, as a journalist, went and I was covering this story about the South Bronx. And I then later went down. This was when I was a correspondent. I lived in New York, and I went down to DC to visit the mothership, the headquarters. And, this person was very, very famous in the NPR world. And they came up to me and they were like, oh my God, weren't you terrified to be in that neighborhood in the South Bronx? And I was just like, actually, no, like I hang out there. Like there's a community there. Yes, it's an open air drug market, but that's the police fault. It's not the community. But I know, and I wrote this, I said, this person never would have thought of asking me, weren't you terrified the first day that you stepped foot into the headquarters here at NPR? And I would have been like, yeah, that was really scary. Like I was just like, oh my God, what? And I always use that as a way of saying, so the reason why you need to have journalism or authors, everything that is truly representative, is because in the case of journalism, it makes you better journalists. And in your world, it's about representation, because that's excellence, actually.
And I want to shout a hello to the classrooms that are watching us. And if any of the students have questions for Maria, please drop them in the chat. We're not going to be on for too long. So please go ahead and put in your questions. We want to make sure we get to them. Maria, this year, I mean, we already had such an incredible festival. Today is day 2. We incorporated multiple writing, craft, and draw sessions as part of the festival's commitment to literacy and representation. So how do you view the power of storytelling, and how can these students, these young people, harness that power in all forms to uplift themselves and their communities?
So when I was younger, because I was raised in a home that was first monolingual Spanish, I never thought that I could write. And we didn't also have a lot of English books for kids in our home because they were in Spanish. So I had a real complicated relationship with writing in the English language. I didn't ever feel I was good enough to write in the English language, to be an author. And it was actually when I was a little kid that I remember hearing my mom doing what she always did, which was telling a story about, déjame que te cuente, fui al mercado, I went to the supermarket y me encontré con fulanita, and then this happened, and then the other guy who came, and then, I met the dog, and it was just like, and then what happened, Mom? And I realized, like, oh, actually writers are just telling stories.
A chisme. We're telling a chisme.
Oftentimes chisme. And, Latino USA did a whole hour about chisme and why it is different than gossip. It is otra cosa, and what you learn from the conversations in chisme about your own family that are revealing important moments for most of us. But yeah, it was in fact taking the chisme and saying, no, pues, es que if I do that, then I'm actually like a writer. So then I did find my voice as somebody who was on the radio and then on television, and now running a company and etc. But I tell the kids, and that's what the book is all about. The book for kids is all about, right? It's all about like, start asking those questions early. Have that curiosity and that awareness early, that, because I was a little kid. There was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was no, but I saw everything happening around me. And it ended up having a huge impact on me because I was raised during the civil rights era. I saw Martin Luther King alive.
Wow.
You understand? So for the kids now, I'm like, but you're growing up in a moment where there's also history being made. And these things that you have lived through, whether it's in your community, like here in Harlem, in New York City, which is historic Black community, or whether it's in your neighborhood, wherever you are, things that you're seeing, things that are happening, people who are arriving, stories, like they're planting seeds in who you are already. And if you're like, well, I don't like to write, look at me, I'm writing by hand. I don't like to write. Well, get yourself a recorder like this and tell your stories like this. By the way, a lot of this book was written like this.
I love that. I'm going to have to borrow that.
Because sometimes, especially when I was writing a book for kids, I wanted to be a kid myself, and I couldn't sit at a typewriter at a computer and be a kid because I wanted to be 10 and I didn't see. So then I would go and I would get into kind of a hypnotic state so I could remember, and I would become a 10-year-old girl, and I would be like, so let me tell you what happened. And I would record it on this. So again, understand, kids, that also final thing, what do we all do all the time? Whether it's on our phones or on a computer or on an iPad or on a TV, we're watching other people's stories all the time.
Yes.
And this is a country that now needs to be representative of us. And so we need to see your stories on radio, audio, podcast, television, books, etc. Because that's why we do this, right? So that we can all see ourselves. And by the way, this is an American woman's book, right? Oh, it's a book by a Mexican woman. It's a book by, yeah. If we're all here, somos americanos y americanas, todos, con o sin papeles. And so your stories are of this place. And we have to take up space in this place with our stories. And that's why I do the journalism that I do.
Maria, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you. This is so beautiful. And, I have to say, like, for me, as a journalist, as an author, as a storyteller, it was so empowering once I realized that I come from this long ancestral line of storytellers, even from the Tainos in Puerto Rico with the Areitos, from the Black slaves that were brought in with the song that later transformed into the history of Bombay Plena and the stories that were told in Bombay Plena, and the chisme from my abuelita, sitting drinking cafecitos under the mango tree in the backyard, to just take that all and let it feel me, right? Like own it, really own it, and give me power. And that's what I want all young people to do, is to look back at those stories, look back at their own history, their own ancestry, and just feel that power of your own stories. So let's hear about your book. I want to listen to you and your beautiful words that you've captured in your book.
Okay. And I see there's some questions. Let's see what I can do. So this is kind of answering the same question, why I do what I do. And I know that a lot of kids might be interested with what it means when you go viral. I went viral, and this kind of addresses that. So I hope this book makes you pay attention to the seeds being planted in you that will sprout as you get older. For me, the seeds of that invisibility sprang forth and inspired me to become a radio and television journalist and work at NPR, CNN, PBS, and many other media companies. Along the way, people told me I was too close to the stories that I wanted to tell to be objective. You're too Mexican-y. You're too immigrant-y. You're too feminist-y. You're too lefty. You're too ungrateful and maybe even too unpatriotic. After working for all of those companies and proving myself over and over again, I finally decided to go out on my own. I took a huge risk and I left corporate media to create my own company, Futuro Media, in 2010. I became the first Latina to found a national independent nonprofit newsroom. I took control of the microphone and the camera. One day in 2016, as a journalist with 30 years of experience, I appeared on a cable news talk show to talk about immigration. The other guest, who supported the policies of then President Donald Trump, dared to refer to immigrants, fellow human beings, as illegals. In this moment, I was the opposite of invisible. I was on primetime television, being watched in the homes of millions of people. On live television, I let loose. There is no such thing as an illegal human being, I said in response to the other guest speaker. Illegal is not a noun. Never use that term to refer to a human being. It was the first thing the Nazis did to the Jews. They labeled them an illegal people. In fact, that is how the Holocaust started. But I didn't get a chance to say that on TV. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Calling a person illegal is like saying they don't have a right to exist. And that's a dangerous idea. Within hours of my television appearance, the clip had been shared on social media thousands of times. What helped this moment go viral, apart from the words, was that I was correcting a dude on TV. The way it came out, I looked like I did a double take and, oh no, you didn't, shoulder twist. I'm a trained boxer, so I can't help myself as I scolded him. And there was a finger involved. That was, in fact, everything. It was just like, ¿qué? What? That was, and so there is a saying in Mexican Spanish, no hay mal que por bien no venga. There is no bad from which good cannot come. Okay, that's a clunky way of saying that if something bad happens, you can always find the silver lining. The discomfort I felt as a kid being planted a seed in me, the discomfort I felt as a kid, just the discomfort, planted a seed in me that led me onto this path. Being a journalist is a job, yes, but for me, it's also a mission. I have committed my career to scratching that massive itch of invisibility. I have continued to fight against allowing other people to tell our stories, people who did not really understand or know us, and I have refused to give them the power to control the narrative. So it begins by saying I was invisible. I felt invisible. And then everything about my life has been about, and I'm going to respond to that. I'm not going to be invisible. I'm going to be the most visible possible. And if you want to see what that looks like, watch me tonight. I'll be on primetime again with Joy Reid, who was the anchor when that moment happened and I went viral. It's now been seen by, I don't know, 10 million, 12 million, who knows. But I'll be on TV tonight, taking up space, talking about Latinos and Latinas, about important coalition building, and about how Latinos and Latinas must not be anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, anti-gay. Nosotros tenemos que ser mucho mejores que esto. And that's part of what this book is all about.
Oh, Maria, when you were talking, I just kept thinking of my fuego, fuego, fuego. Yes. I'm like, again, I feel like Latinos, like Latin America, we have a tradition of speaking up. Like we have a tradition of cacerolazos. We have a tradition of taking to the streets. We have a tradition of activism. So to those young people who are watching right now, we have several classrooms watching. It's like, just take a place in your community, figure out what you're passionate about, and make your own difference. And I want to segue into some questions because I know we have some students questions. So Rachel, our backstage producer, is going to put those up. So Maria, the first question from Mr. Werner's class: how do you give back to your community? And I love that this is coming from students. That's so awesome.
Yeah. So you know how I give back? It's like in my work, right? Yeah, of course. Talking about the stories, representing, being proudly Latina, proudly Mexican in every way, so that, people like Mayra end up seeing me and saying, God, I want to do that too. But there's other ways of giving back, which is restoring people's humanity. Why I talk about this term that is used and that probably many people in your life have used it. Maybe you've even used it when people say, oh, illegal immigrants or those illegals over there. And it's like, no, that is dehumanizing. And so the way you fight against that is by recognizing people's humanity. There are people who might deliver my food who are undocumented, but I invite them into my home and offer them a drink of water and ask them what languages they speak. And then they'll say like, oh, I speak Zapotec, Nahuatl, Mixtec, Espanol, a little Korean, and some English. And I'm like, so sometimes a very simple gesture. Somebody actually said in one of these questions, they was like, tip more. It's another way. In other words, again, this country is so set on separating and dehumanizing that we have to encourage and live and bring forth our common humanity.
And that's why we created the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival, because we wanted young people, we want to inspire young people, and we want to uplift their voices. We wanted to tell them, everyone, no matter where they're from, that their stories are important, that their voices matter. So we have another question from Mr. Werner's class. What were challenges you faced as a Latinx woman, and how did you overcome them? I love this question. So beautiful.
I mean, I think like in both the kids book and in the adult book more, I talk about this thing called the imposter syndrome, which is where you feel like, wait, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not good enough to be here. And I think that when you are Latino, Latina, Latinx, and you feel invisible, you don't see yourself, it's actually bad for your mental health. It's actually really bad for you. And so then you begin to internalize, yeah, what am I doing here? I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'm not, etc. And I think that was very much tied to the general invisibility of Latinos and Latinas when I was growing up. Here's the thing. There's a more challenging situation we have now, because Latinos, Latinas, people, Latine, Latinx, we have now been targeted. We have been targeted by a former president, which is like, how is this possible? Well, it is, right? And so we have to acknowledge that. And we also now have to kind of climb out of this hole that we didn't create for ourselves. So as kids, get educated. Let me just give you a couple of statistics, right? Latinos and Latinas are the second largest voting population in the United States right now. So how we vote is going to impact democracy. Latinos and Latinas have over-indexed over white kids and Black kids at the rate at which you go from high school straight into college. If Latinos and Latinas, if we were measured, if our economic power was measured as as a gross domestic product, we would be in the top 5 in the world. So this is what we call an asset-based understanding of who we are. What do we bring to this country? And so you need to know, just like, again, read the book, do the research. We are the solution of what's going to happen in the United States of America. But by the way, Latinos and Latinas, we have to do a lot of the hard work. We have been all witnessing this. We won't go into much more detail, but we have to work on issues that everybody in this country has to work on. Anti-Blackness, right? anti-gayness, anti-trans feelings, all of these things, being anti-indigenous,
Toxic masculinity too.
Toxic masculinity, teasing people because they don't have as much money as you, you know, and teasing is a thing. I was teased. I'm sure I teased. It's terrible. We have, the more we can talk about it, we didn't have a word for it. And yeah, of course I was bullied. I was the littlest kid in the class. So yeah, of course I was bullied, but we have to, and I know that's why we love these conferences, is because kids and adults get to say, yeah, no, and we're talking about it actually helps us do better.
So we're going to take a question from Miss Muse, fourth grade class in Rhode Island. They really want to hear about your favorite books as kids. And that question is coming from Emma.
Oh my God. Wow. Oh, well, let me see. So I'm going to think about the books that I loved reading to my kids. Maybe my daughter will even help me, because I'm like there's Guess How Much I Love You. That's like that's an old school picture book. Oh my God. The classic Goodnight Moon. There was a Picasso and Matisse. That was one of our favorites, which about Picasso and Matisse, but it's Picasso and Matisse. Oh my God, Clarence, and also, what is the name of it was Clarence the Cowboy, and then no, there's who is it, the mouse who's like really cute, the pig who dresses up. So those were really important to me. As a girl growing up, like when I was in high school and things, some of the books that really helped me were actually reading Ernest Hemingway. And the reason why was because Ernest Hemingway has a way of writing that is very accessible. It felt like, oh, I could write this.
Yes. I had the exact same experience, Maria. I had the exact same experience.
So
it wasn't until I read Ernest Hemingway that I felt, oh, I can do this. I can totally write.
That is, Mayra, you and I actually have to get together, because obviously we share some genes somewhere along the line, because I was always fascinated with from Ernest Hemingway. Fell in love with everything. Also, he writes about Cuba. He writes about Spain. He uses words in Spanish, aficionado. So it was just like, oh my God, I feel this guy. But of course, he was a white man from Idaho. And yet I felt completely identified. And, I have been asked, and kids can read it. So the paperback version, I think it's Vintage or Penguin, Penguin. The paperback version of The Sun Also Rises was just re-released this year. And guess who they asked to write the new introduction?
Yay!
And it was like, of all the people in the world, why would they ask me? And it was in that introduction that I was able to reveal my fascination with Ernest Hemingway, and also the fact that he died on the same day and year that I was born.
Well, do you believe in reincarnation?
I do.
I'm Buddhist, so I'm like,
a part of him left and a part of him came into me, because how is that possible, Mayra, that of all of the people in the entire world that they would ask to write for Ernest Hemingway, it would be me? So I'm so glad that we're sharing this space. Hi, Ernie.
So on that vein, Jaciel Gomez.
Oh, I remember it was Olivia. Olivia is the character from the picture books. And why do I actually...
Olivia the pig?
Olivia the pig.
I know Olivia the pig.
So one last quick thing. It's not exactly official. So it's kind of unofficial. So you don't have to tweet this out.
This is the first announcement.
Kinda about my next project. And all thanks to my agent, Adriana Dominguez, because she's always, has thoughts percolating. I think it's going to be not one, but maybe 2 picture books.
Felicidades, Maria! Felicidades! When should we expect el regalito?
I don't know, because I think I'm going to write them in December when I'm in Punta Cana in the Caribbean, when I'm off, and I'm really disconnected and I have some time to just be. And then the other important thing, which is affects schools too, is that I will be doing a documentary about Uvalde, and trying to understand that and giving it greater context. And so, we have to do it. We have to do it right. We do the picture book, but we also have to do this serious work. And I want kids to know you can do both or one or all. And also remember that there is a Spanish language version of Once I Was You. So be sure to get that too. It's coming up. And this is the new version. I love the new tagline, right? Once I Was You, finding my voice and passing the mic. It comes out in January in Spanish for kids.
So Yaciel Gomez, make sure you grab that. And Maria's going to tell us what is she currently reading.
What am I currently reading? I just finished reading the book. I think it's called Why Didn't You Tell Me? It's a memoir by Carmen Rita Wong, who was on a personal search to find out her personal story, and it's really dramatic. And I'm still getting through Elena Ferranti, the second book of the series. And I'm reading, I don't have them with me because I do most of my reading we have a little cottage in Connecticut. Joan Ackerman writes books about birds, like the brains of birds, the smart birds, all that. And I'm a birder, so I'm reading that. And I'm also dabbling with, on my nightstand is Sandra Cisneros' most recent book of poetry in English and Spanish. So
I love poetry. I used to pick up books of poetry as a child in the library at the Catholic school that I went to. I mean, it was like, yes, like all the Puerto Rican poets are like badass. These are like the Lola Rodriguez de Tio.
Oh my God, I'm lucky to say that I was friends with Pedro Pietri. So to me, Pedro Pietri is a Puerto Rican poetic king. May he rest in peace. And friends with a lot of the New Yorican poets, Miguel Algarin. So I'm very blessed in that sense. But yeah, and Sandra Cisneros believes poetry can heal and cure and save lives. And so,
I'm working on a new young adult right now that I'm co-writing with my friend Marie Marquardt, and my character that I'm writing, she's a trovadora. So I've been so immersed in the world of the trova and poetry, and it's just it just opens your heart in a way that that narrative doesn't. And it's a different way. It's a different way of viewing the world.
So I'm sure you know Roy Brown, but if you go back to the original Roy Brown and Aires Bucaneros and Zoraida Santiago, who has such a beautiful voice and is La Moderna Nueva Trova of the Bucaneras, I just love the fact that that's what I was listening to as a young woman here in New York. And then we have that also. Óyeme, Mayra.
Hay que hacer un cafecito.
Where are you based, Mayra?
I'm in Atlanta. Right now I'm with Ismée in Connecticut running the festival, but I'm usually in Atlanta.
Oh my God, you're in Connecticut? Because, I'll be in Connecticut tomorrow morning.
What?
Yeah, we have a little cottage in Connecticut. That's where I look at the birds. I track the eagles and the hawks and the blue jays, and yeah.
Well, you're gonna find it beautiful because it's just like an explosion of fall leaves that I'm looking out the window right now.
Well,
Maria, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure and honor. I'm gonna put the slides so everybody can see your beautiful book.
Thank you.
Once more, get Maria's book, Once I Was You. Read it, include it in your classrooms, have your students read it. And Maria, it's been a joy. So thank you so much for being with us here this morning. Like I have no words. I don't want to start crying again.
I feel it in my heart. Thank you so much. And I do what I do for all of you with a lot of love. And, it's seriously, people are like, oh, wait, what? And it's about love. It's about humanity. It's also about democracy. So please vote. Make sure your parents vote if they can, if they're American citizens. Register to vote. Be making sure that when you turn 18, you register to vote. It's just one way of doing democracy. The other way is going to libraries, buying books, talking about books, protecting books. being in your park, being part of your community. There's many ways that we can experience and live democracy. And so I'm just so thankful to have been included in your conference. Next time, let's do it IRL.
Yes. So thank you to the classrooms that have joined us. Thank you,
And thank
everybody.
you to all
for
the kids.
watching.
Yes. If you
Una
have
abrazo.
the book, if you get the book and your parents give you permission, take a picture and get it to me on my Instagram or however you can. And I'll post you because you'll see on my Instagram right now, there are a lot of kids' pictures. So we'd love to share you on my Instagram page.
Ok, bueno, un abrazo. Gracias, María. Bye, everyone.